Hello, welcome back to the Simply Street English podcast. My name is Jake and welcome again. And thank you for tuning in to listen. I hope you have had a good week so far. Has anyone else just had a super busy week? Yep, that's me this week, but I'm still turning up and I'm still here to give you some more English input. So, welcome if you're new, and if you've been here before, you know the drill. You can find all of the podcast episode transcripts, on patreon.com/Simply Street English. So let's get into the episode. It's gonna be interesting, I think. So today we're talking about 7 tips to speak English more fluently. There'll be more tips than this, but these are the ones that I think will be quite useful for you. So grab a drink or carry on washing up or running, whatever you're up to, and let's think a bit more about how to be fluent in English. So, number 1, try and spend as much time as possible in the language. Now, I will go a bit more into the most important thing that I think you can do when starting a language, or even starting to develop from whatever level you're at, and that's to listen lots. So I won't talk about that just now, I'll talk about that later, but do spend lots and lots of time reading, writing, listening to the language, okay? All of these things, just spending time. And I know that everyone has a busy schedule, but what you have to do if you're serious about learning a language is just make it part of your routine, make it part of yourself, make it part of, one could say, make it part of your identity, make it part of something you do every single day, alright? So this is what I do with languages. I listen to it in the car because I drive a lot, and I'll talk about listening later, but I also have a notebook and I write things down, and I read stories in the language, in Spanish, I try a bit of German, I even have learned some Swedish, just lots of random fun languages. And what you need to do is spend time in the language, or you won't improve, really. That's it. Make it part of your routine. Get used to just doing it, because then you're on autopilot. That's the first one. Just make sure you're spending the time. Because if you're not, then you're just not going to improve. Simple as that. So find what works for you. I will obviously speak about my favourite form of learning. And actually, I'll do that now. I'm going to say tip number 2 is to listen loads, okay? My friends ask me, or they say to me, I can't learn a language because it's just not what I'm good at. And I just say, look, just start listening to the language to begin with. You don't have to put so much pressure on yourself. Just turn on a podcast in that language and you will not understand any of it to begin with, and that's okay. You will eventually, though, start to hear sounds repeated again and again and again, or words, and they'll stick in your head. I promise you. It happens to me, and I'll just be walking down the street and I'll say a word and I'll be like, oh, that's now stuck in my head. I mean, even if I don't know what the word means, I then go and look it up. But reading transcripts along with listening is perfect, or that's what I like to do as well. But then you do also need to learn what those things mean. So yes, reading is important as well, but listen loads, okay? Listen, reread what it's all about, and just listen again. Like, to begin with, it's so easy to just turn on a podcast and hear what the language sounds like, get a real feel for it. And that takes the pressure off, especially when you're first beginning, because you don't have to work very hard to just sit and listen. I guess it can be a bit tiring if you don't know what they're saying, but eventually you will start to pick things up, especially if you're reading a little bit about what they're saying as well. If you can get, if you're watching a TV series and reading subtitles in the language, that is perfect as well, because then you get context. But you will, if you listen to a podcast or something that's about a specific subject, they'll use the words and phrases again and again. So listen loads and loads, okay? In your spare time, running, washing up, they're my favourite times to listen to stuff like this, or in the car. But you will just naturally start to absorb the language, and once you can understand what other people say, you'll then be able to recall those words from your brain, because you do know them. If someone says them to you, eventually you'll be able to draw on that resource in your brain to be able to communicate with people. So the first step in language learning, I would say, is just understanding what people say to you, understanding the message, then you speak, okay? Which brings us on to tip number 3. Speak out loud to yourself. It's essentially, right, I know you're going to make mistakes. I do. But what it does is it gets you used to using the language. It gets you used to the mouth sounds, to the interesting tones or ways of saying things and pronouncing them, so that when you do have a conversation, you're a bit more used to it. Now, you do want to know that you're improving and that you're not making loads of mistakes, so I'd recommend recording perhaps a short video and just looking at it and being like, okay, was that right? Was that not right? Maybe send it to a friend that speaks the language or show them. And also having a video is great, because in a few months' time, you'll be able to look back and watch it and say, hey, I've improved a lot. So yeah, if you're, like I said, if you're using your mouth to literally sound out the words, it will become easier for you when you talk to people. And it's fun to see what you come up with as well, because I sit there talking to myself occasionally and words come up that I didn't think that I knew. Or if I don't know a word and I get stuck, what I then do is write down that word and be like, okay, that's obviously a word that I need to know. So I go and look it up. And that helps also to bring to the surface all of the words that you perhaps you didn't realize that you should know. And you're like, oh, that's quite a common word. I should probably know that. That's something that I do. And I think that will help as well. Number 3. Oh, I think that's 3. It might be 4 actually, because I'm not really sticking to the plan here. So we had spent lots of time, listen lots, speak out loud. Yeah, so this is number 4. I can't really count, can I? So number 4, right? Learn phrases, not just words. When I first learned Spanish, this helped a lot. I just learned sentences and replies, and eventually what you get is the grammar, you get new vocabulary, you get loads of different things just by learning phrases. Because the same ways that you learn the sentence, you can then take new words that you learn, insert them into the sentence, and you're kind of using the grammar that you've memorized without thinking about it, which is interesting. I've got a little book. I write down phrases that are in context. So instead of just single words by themselves in a vacuum floating around in space, I like to have a whole phrase or a whole sentence. And, there'll be something that native speakers will use. And so I've got something in context really helping to frame what that word is and give it meaning. Instead of saying, I'm going to learn the word for spoon. Great. You just got the word spoon lying on the page. No, you want to have I use a spoon to eat ice cream. And then you've learned the word for spoon, how to use it in a sentence, and we've put some food in there as well. Ice cream, great, why not? It's vocabulary building. So if you're learning the word excited, perhaps, to be really, I'm so excited, I can't wait for this new film to come out. Well, there you go, there's a phrase right there. You can say, I'm so excited, I'm really looking forward to it, I can't wait. You can use the word excited by itself, or you can use those words, those phrases, which are also used as well. You could say they're more natural, but it's all natural. If you say, hey, I'm really excited about that, we use that all the time. So, yeah, learn phrases, not just words by themselves. That's one I would say. Number 5, don't worry about making mistakes. Just practice, especially because there are so many English speakers. You can use your English to speak to other non-native English speakers, and, they'll probably make mistakes too, and neither of you will know. Well, depending on your level. I know that because I can speak to people in a few different languages, like 1 or 2, and I'll say things, and there's for sure things I'm saying wrong. But if we're both learners, hey, I'm not as afraid. But don't worry about speaking to native speakers either, because most of the time people appreciate it. Think about a time someone spoke to you in your native language and they were trying their best. You know, it's not as bad as you think it's going to be, especially if, I appreciate if someone's speaking English to me. I ain't got a clue about their language most of the time, so I appreciate it. So mistakes are part of learning. I've also made mistakes before in different languages. I've said things, oh my goodness me, that then I was really embarrassed about. But after making that mistake, you'll never do it again because it was so embarrassing. But if you're in with friends, it's fine, and it's a good learning curve. Like I said, native speakers, we don't mind if you make little errors because, especially people that learn languages, we understand this. I understand this. It's about the communication, about the message, not about getting every word correct. Perfection isn't really a thing in language learning, but improving is, and that takes time. So keep speaking, keep practicing, and eventually you will make fewer mistakes. I'm gonna have to give up counting because I've been chopping and changing a lot here. So I think it's number 6. Have conversations with people online. Essentially, I think you should use one of the best tools we've ever had is the internet. Get on there, and either you can use ChatGPT these days and it'll talk back to you, or find someone on like italki or something. There are loads of different websites you can use to have real conversations with people. So just utilize what you have those real conversations with people. You could even combine a few of these different things, like write a whole conversation and then practice it. But then, this tip is more about have real conversations with people. So it ties in with the not making mistakes tip. Just do what you have to do to learn, because you will improve much quicker if you just have conversations with real people, okay? Get on and do it. And number 7, I really hope that this is the 7th one. I haven't just messed it up. Anyway, this is the last tip for this episode. What you're going to have to do is be consistent and patient. Even if it feels like at the time, after a month, 2 months, that you haven't improved, you cannot give up. Fluency does not happen overnight. It's about a consistent process. Just practicing a little bit every day. Though if you can do an hour, I would say an hour, between an hour and 2 hours, if possible, you will see massive progress over the months if you're consistent. I know it's not possible always to do an hour a day, but if you can somehow get it in there, right? Imagine a year of doing an hour a day. You'd be doing hundreds and hundreds of hours in the year. You will see the payoff. Again, just make it part of your routine. Be consistent and patient, and just keep going with it. Because if you don't give up, you will get so much better. Combine all of these tips together. I think it's worth saying as well, maybe this is a bonus tip. Take some time to fine-tune your process. Take the parts of language learning that you like, make them interesting and fun. Really sit down and be like, how can I learn? When will I be able to have the time? What am I trying to do here? Take the time to plan it, and then all you have to do is show up. I record how much time I've worked on a language a day, a couple of phrases from that day, and review it, go over it as much as I can. But I spend the time listening and speaking to myself, and eventually then I unleash my basic rudimentary language learning on a native speaker. So do all these different things to learn English more fluently, and you will improve. So all the best with your language learning journey. Keep happy while you're learning. Enjoy the English, and see you again in the next episode. Bye bye.